The Riker dilemma. It's a big one. But first... Right, in a previous video, I jumped the gun massively. Massively jumped the gun. I watched 1 minute 25, drew a conclusion from the video, and then lost my shit about it. This is not a good way to go. This is not who I am. I fucked up. And I'm sorry. And Fog of War, I'm sorry. That is not something that I should have done. Now, this following video does kind of lead on from some of the subjects that he brought on in that video, but it is not in direct relation to that video. This is actually in relation to doing a stream afterwards, and people didn't know how the Rikers support units worked, which is what we're going to be going over in this video. So, Riker support units. These are potentially the most powerful support unit in the game, and they have a very distinct symbol which you can't really miss. It's the same as all the other supports. It looks something along the lines of 2 upside down chevrons, as you saw. Now, the plus side with Riker support units is they are very, very rarely active as initial waves. What I mean by this is, typically speaking, if you're running around New York, you will very seldom run into them, aside from if you're going into missions or if you attack a level 3 or level 4 Riker control point. Other than that, they're very rarely just out and about. You don't really see them. Up ahead of us now is a resource convoy, and you will see that when we get close, we aim at them, we can see the individual units, what they are, and their amount of health or EHP. And you can quite easily see that there is not a support present because 1, the symbol's not there, 2, they don't have the health bonuses, as you can see. However, when it comes to secondary, as well as then tertiary waves and following on, they are very, very common. Now, unlike other support units, they kind of have a very strange condition for their support, such as the other 2 factions that have support units, Outcasts, have a support unit. They will put a box on the ground. This box gives other Outcasts, if they interact with it, shock ammo. This isn't normally a problem unless you're running the ammo directive as well, so then all Outcasts will have shock and fire ammo. This is about as fun as it sounds. We then have Black Tusk, who have a support unit that put what we call the healing lunchbox on the ground. This is a very defined area. Other Black Tusk within that area of the healing lunchbox will be healed. This is very prominent, especially in legendaries, one of the reasons why support becomes such a high target priority. As well as when an enemy stays within that lunchbox healing zone for long enough, I'm not too sure how many ticks it takes, but it's not immediate. It does require a certain amount of duration. I think on like heroic it's like 3 ticks, but on legendary it's like 2, and they will then get essentially a secondary health bar. These are conditions that have to be met. Outcasts have to put a box down, other outcasts then have to interact with that box to get the ammo, and then with Black Tusk they have to put a box down. Other units have to spend a certain amount of time within that zone to get the buff, as well as be in that zone to get the heal. What is the condition for Rikers being supportive of their allies? Existing. That is it. They just have to exist. Now, there are a few other factors, and it's kind of hard to pin this down to try and test this. As you might have noticed, there is currently, where I am, a support present. There are a few enemies that have the double health bar, so there is a support present, but some enemies are not being affected by this. It's hard to tell as to whether this is a at range thing or whether it's the support was part of the control point, so the enemies that are now attacking the convoy aren't actually under the support of the support. This is where it gets convoluted, and it's hard to actually test this because I've essentially got to get 2 different enemy event groups and then try and differentiate between what support spawned with what event, and then figure out whether it's range orientated or whether it's something to do with whether or not it has to do with the actual spawns. However, like I said, typically when running around doing events normally, you won't really run into them until you get to the second or tertiary wave, at which point they do become very common. That also being said, missions and control points, they are very, very prominent. They also can support each other. So a support, when it spawns, will never have, because it can't give itself a secondary health bar. But if two supports spawn, they can give each other a secondary health bar, which is quite strange. There also seems to be a gap in the veterancy. By this, I mean that from initial testing, it seems as though only elite supports are able to actively buff chungers and named units. Although, that being said, there is currently an elite patrol leaving this control point, and hopefully pretty soon you will see that it doesn't have the secondary health, as you can see here, and if we zoom it in for a closer look, it doesn't have the secondary health, which is simply just because it's not actually part of the control point. So if we then actually start pushing into control point, as you could hopefully see from the previous image and now here, the bonus health is passive. They don't have to be aggroed, it's just there. There's nothing else about it, it's just there as long as a support actually exists. But the moment we kill the support, as we just have, if we then start looking around again at some of the enemies, you should notice they no longer have their secondary health bar. Killing the support will remove that health bar. There's now just one problem. If another support spawns, they get the secondary health bar back as long as they are part of the same event. Which does mean that the supports for Rikers do end up being a huge priority on your hit list. Now in solo, this isn't actually too much of an issue. As you can see, we've got another support, we kill him and nothing is getting its secondary health bar, which is perfectly fine, but then another support has spawned. It can become kind of annoying, and as you can see, another one has spawned, so we get another health bar. It constantly ticks and ticks and ticks, and then we can also get named chungers as well with the secondary health bar. This is why Rikers actually end up being a huge problem. Simply just a support existing can actually change the whole dynamic of the fight. Now, I'm aware this is very fast paced, but I'm hoping that if needed, you can sort of just go back and just have a quick look to see the differences between them, as well as the rate in which a lot of the supports actually spawn, which is a huge problem with just Rikers in general. It's almost as though their support units are actually factored into just their normal average spawns, whereas in other factions, support units just aren't. They're kind of like a rarer spawn. However, like I said, with Rikers, this isn't always the case. And then again, like I said, two supports can support each other. This is a named support with a secondary health bar. It's not meant to. There's another support. Yeah, two supportings coming in at the same time is a huge issue, just because if you kill one, it's not going to remove the secondary health bar. You have to kill both of them. And this is very much a more common issue than you would originally anticipate, especially again when moving into multiplayer. Now this is already shaping up to be a pretty lengthy video, however I ran this a total of 8 times and I got 1 named Chunga, 1 named Grenadier, 6 named supports. What you've seen, or what I'm showing, is 2 named supports and 1 named Chunga. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty lengthy video and I do apologise for that. And if you're wondering where the second named support is, well, it's the one you're actually watching now. And the reason I prioritise this clip is simply just because, although previously I said supports can't typically support themselves, if they have been given their secondary health bar by another support, they can. And this is especially prevalent within named. So here we can see 1 named support, which died. The boss is again another named. This one still has its secondary health bar because the boss is still present. And then we can finally kill the named elite, simply just because of the rotation of that damn bloody health bar. There is like a optimal order to do this in, which is basically always try and focus the support, and then if you have a named support with a normal support as well, kill the normal support, kill another ad, and then kill the named. Alright, so now it's time to defend this control point, and again, the reason I'm showing this is because there is also a resource convoy making its way past on the left-hand side, which I'm also going to aggro so that we can see that there is actually a difference between support spawning with the control point and affecting the control point enemies, and then support spawning with the resource convoy and supporting the resource convoy. They don't intermingle the supports. It's quite strange. So here we can see the resource convoy. Luckily at the moment, we're still waiting for the initial wave to clear. So like I said, initial wave, there's not really generally a support. It's always typically, not always, but typically secondary and tertiary waves. So here we have an enemy with 2 health bars, but we still obviously have enemies with 1 health bar. So there's a support somewhere, but what one is it affecting? This is the issue. Again, as you can hopefully see, there are enemies with the double health bars, and there are clearly enemies with a single health bar. We now need to find the support, and we now need to try and figure out if it's with the resource convoy or if it is with the control point, and then hopefully deal with them in a logical or relatively logical order, which is honestly a lot easier said than done for obvious reasons. Now, just in case we're paying attention and keeping count, this makes our 7th named support. Yeah, I'm trying to emphasize this to hopefully draw a point at the end, which some people might be upset with, but we'll get there in a second. Now, one thing that I have noticed, which may or may not interest people, is that the supports don't seem to conform to a particular weapon type. As we know, True Sun's rushers have a shotgun. I believe it's the SASG or the Super 90. True Sun's LMGs have an M60. Black Tusk have the G36. The Black Tusk rushers have the F2000 and the KSG. We have a conformity of weapons per enemy type. Supports don't seem to have this. The one I just killed here while defending had a M700, whereas the one that I killed actually within the control point had some form of AR. Yeah, they don't seem to conform, which is another reason why they are so problematic. Now, one of the points I wish to make throughout this, as you can see, there's just another support just hanging around here. Although, technically, their EHP is the same as others within their classes, the reason we say different factions have different health isn't anything to do with any other faction other than Rikers. Supports are numerous enough within the Rikers faction to be a rather large problem, which does alter the EHP to a point of where, generally speaking, the easiest way to actively deal with Rikers is Headhunter builds, because if you're doing so much more damage than what their EHP is allowing anyway, there's no difference. A one-shot is a one-shot. If you're going to go down the DPS route, you will notice a difference. And this is one of the main reasons why we say different factions have different health. We don't actually mean it within Outcasts, True Sons, Cleaners, Hyenas. We literally just mean the Spicy Boy Rikers. I've also put quite a bit of emphasis on multiplayer, which of course means, we're going to be showing some multiplayer. So I've got Thing 1 in here, who is part of the Bro Clan as well, and then we just match made for 2 randoms. It took like 40 minutes to actually find people, which was hilarious. And then from here, immediately you can see that everything's got a double health bar. There's like 3 supports already out and about on the map. This is basically going to be the running theme throughout. There is only one area throughout the entirety of Wall Street where supports cannot spawn. Everywhere else, supports will basically spawn with pretty much every wave, or will already be incorporated into the initial spawns within multiplayer with Riker missions. You can hopefully see it throughout, that everything essentially always, well, not always, because typically I will try and either deal with the supports as soon as I see them, or one of my lovely teammates seems to get them before I do. So not everything is going to have a double health bar like all of the time. There are ways to deal with it, as we have shown. Just kill the support. However, this down can be brought back by just another support spawning. Another area that seems to be a bit weird is the stairs that we're on now. We've ran this a few times, and we only actually really got like one support to spawn, which was nearer towards the end. But other than that, pretty much the entire way through the mission, other than the stairs and the APC, we didn't once get a support to spawn at the APC area. We got one to spawn on these stairs, but other than that, that was basically it when it came to minimal Riker support activity. The rest of the time, yeah, as you can see already, we just loaded in, hit this area, and there's supports all over the place. Very, very prevalent with the support units. From here, we have basically covered everything I want to go over. Like I said, it's a bit of a longer video, but hopefully it's going to let it play over the background while we go over the key points. Rikers with their support units are pretty OP. The support units will basically double the health of all enemies within their particular event. So if it's a control point, only enemies within the control point seem to be affected. If it's a territory control, only enemies within the territory control seem to be affected. Named support seem to be a lot more numerous than any other type of named, which I feel they kind of set us up for a little bit, with the Duchess being one of the first named Rikers we come across throughout playing the story. Riker support units cannot buff themselves, as we just saw with Duchess. She didn't have a secondary health bar, but if there is another support unit present, they can buff each other, as well as if you kill one, you need to effectively kill both to remove the buff from all other Rikers. Again, to remove the buff from Rikers, you just need to kill the support. While that support is active, they will have the double health. If you kill that support Riker, the double health will disappear. If you have one ad with double health, the support, you kill the support, and then another support spawns, that one ad will get its double health back. If it pleases you, supports don't really seem to conform to a sort of weapon type, as well as supports, and the key point here really, especially within multiplayer, the support units are numerous enough to change the overall EHP equation, tipping it more heavily towards the health side. But this is also the reason why we say that a different faction, i.e. just Rikers, will have different health. And it's simply because those supports are numerous, pesky, and just generally annoying enough to actually alter it. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Sorry for it being a bit longer. However, there was quite a bit to go over. Again, this isn't in relation to the previous video, which again, I do apologize for. This is just something that came up in a stream and people didn't actually realize, one, how numerous supports were, two, that killing them removed the entire buff until another support spawned, three, that those buffs can actually affect all enemies, including other named as well as chungers, as long as they are within the same spawn area. There are a few hard-coded areas, such as where we are now with the APC, where a support just can't spawn for some bizarre reason, as well as the stairway into Wall Street after the first area. Supports don't really seem to be that common there. We ran it a total of 4 or 5 times, and we got one support in total, which was like one of the last ads to spawn, which was a bit weird. Anyway, like I said, this is going to be it for the video. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.